Sweety Candy Vigilante, Chapter 3, Candy Boss. As they pull into the factory of Sweety Candy Vigilante, Sweety jumps out of the car and says, "There's my big boy," and runs over to the big gummy bear and hugs him. Meanwhile, Candy Wolf is telling Pixie that they are home, and she says, "Where is home?" He says, "It's Sweety Candy Vigilante." As Sweety says, "Why don't you give her a tour?" And Pixie looks at him and asks, "What is this place?" Candy Wolf says, "Here you're free, Pixie, if you truly wish to be so. Ask her, what's it gonna be? Christmas cookies, candy cane, eggnog, but please don't say fruitcake. You see what we do here? It is called seasonal air. Just pick one and see what happens." Okay, Christmas cookies. All right, done. And the next thing you know, the whole factory smells like Christmas cookies. 'Tis the season after all. Now, Candy Wolf says, "Pixie, meet Hansel and Gretel. They're Sweeties Candy's mix masters." Pixie is now part of the Candy Vigilante. Pixie says, "So you guys are actually Hansel and Gretel?" And they both say yes. "Well, this factory is awesome. Am I a little surprised that this building isn't made out of gingerbread, though?" Gretel says, "Only witches do that." And yeah, the city has a strict code on building materials. Gingerbread is strictly prohibited. And then she looks at Pixie and says, "We don't make jokes about gingerbread." Candy Wolf says, "Pixie is just getting used to our ways." Pixie says, "It's all good. I'm sorry, I will never mention ginger or bread ever again." Now Hansel and Gretel look at Pixie and say, "It's our dream that one day we can break the signata of gingerbread houses and the filthy witches that exploit them for their dark magic." Pixie says, "It's all good." And they look at her with excitement in their eyes. "So, are you, Pixie? Are you from a fairy descent?" "No, I don't believe so." "So what? What about elves, imps, gnomes, goblins? Are you from the forests of Mordor?" She says, "Nope, that's a negative on all of that." Hassel then asks, "Do you produce dust? And how and where do you conceal your wings?" Candy Wolf now jumps in and says, "Okay, I think we're done here. We gotta let you guys get back to work." And Hansel says to Pixie, "It was sweet to have met you. We look forward to one day sharing the story of our glorious victory against the evil forest witch." As Pixie and Candy Wolf walk away, she says, "I hope the whole gingerbread thing wasn't too offensive to them." Candy Wolf just looks at her and says, "No, it's fine. The whole gingerbread house witch thing is just them doing them. Around here, they tell their stories over and over. Every time they tell it, it gets more involved into way more action, superhero stuff. Like I was locked in a cage and I tricked the evil blind witch to thinking I was too thin by stretching a twig through the bar in the cage instead of my arm. Then I busted the cage door down and roundhouse kicked her. Then Gretel jumped on her and put her in a headlock. She grabs the witch's brooms and pushed her in the oven. The witch now turns into a zombie, so Gretel shoves the broomstick through her brain. Yada, yada, yada. You get it. But don't get me wrong, they're epic witch hunters and legends, but now they're just fiction writers. And now, as they walk into the lounge area, he says, "This is Sweetie's Lounge. Now, please take a seat and have a drink. And trust me on this." And Pixie says, "I do trust you, but I'm sorry. I really would like to know what is happening. I don't know what you want from me," Pixie says. And as she points at her branded tattoo, she says, "What does this mean?" He says, Trust me, I saved your life, remember? You're one of us now, Pixie. Sweetie chose you, and this is the beginning of your new sweet life. Just take a sip, and as she puts the bottle to her mouth, she says, "This tastes like everything. Now please tell me about her. Who is she? What is she?" As they hold their sodas, Candy Wolf says, "Sweetie is here to make the city a sweeter place, and she believes that if there is no more attention on good rather than all of the awful stuff, the world can be a better place for all of us." Pixie now says, "Okay, but what is she?" Candy Wolf leans over and says, "She is a daughter of a very special man. Have you ever heard of the Candy Man?" "The who?" The Candy Man? And he looks at her with her fangs and says, "You are chosen, and you will listen, or you will leave now." And she takes a breath and says, "I am listening. I am not going anywhere." Sweetie is the Candyman's daughter. Her name is Sweetie Kane. Her parents are Zucker and Coco Kane, and they have an older son named Adam Bomb Kane, who is Sweetie's brother. The Canes own and operate the famous candy factory and the controversial stone shop called Sweet Shop, and that is on the Lower East Side. The Sweet Shop was a New York City landmark, specialized in making the holiday treats and Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter candy for the holidays. The New Yorkers develop a fascination with the store and all of its goodness that they sold: the homemade candy, the ice cream, the baked goods. Sweetie grew up living and working in the shop alongside her parents and her brother. The Sweetie's father, Zucker Kane, was known in the neighborhood as the Candy Man. Little did the patrons of the store know that Zucker was actually the real Candy Man. He was gifted with the power of bringing joy to his community simply by creating and selling his candy creations in the cane shop. Zucker had magic ingredients that filled the heart and the minds with delight. Their ingredients were not harmful, and they were promoted in the shop as being good for your heart and soul. Zucker believed that there was some additives that are good for you, and his sweets promised to bring you joy and happiness for life. Zucker's wife Coco faithfully worked by her husband's side, keeping his secrets and raising their two children, both Sweetie and Adam, and they were trained by their parents to become master candy makers. The family was a beloved fixture in the community. The factory workers and the shop employees were considered family. Now Pixie looks at him and says, "So whatever happened to the shop and the factory?" Zucker and Coco were the sole owners of the sweet candy shop, but they had an investor named Max Folger who received a percentage of the profits. Max was a businessman and not a candy maker. He and the Zuckers trusted one another, and Max made a good living off of his share of the proceeds. Max was a trusted confidant in Zucker and Coco, and he was proud of their achievements. Max had no interest in the ownership of the shop because he was content with the profit he was awarded by the Cane's hard work. Max had a son named Bart. He was an evil dude who doesn't like candy, and his only concern in the Cane's business is his father's share in the earnings. He is a greedy creep who grew up jealous of the Cane's children. Max was embarrassed and disappointed by his vile son. He realized that in Bart, he was serving under, and decided to leave his portions of the profits to Sweetie and Adam, who he loved as his own. 2 days before Christmas Eve, Max Folger decides to draft his will, leaving the Cane's children his financial interest in the sweet shop. Max informs Zucker, Coco, Sweetie, and Adam and his son of his decision, which was, of course, met by fury and hate by Bart. Before he can legally bind his will on Christmas Eve, Max, Zucker, and Coco mysteriously disappears. Although an extensive police investigation was done, they were never seen again. Heartbroken by the disappearance of their parents, Sweetie and Adam launched their own search, which would end up turning up nothing. They, of course, suspected Bart Volgar, but there is no evidence connecting him. After 4 years of searching for their parents, Adam Baumke informed Sweetie that he doesn't want to work in the store and he can't bear the thought of consulting on not knowing what happened to their parents. And Max, he believes that Bart is behind their disappearance, even though he can't prove it. His deep rooted hatred for Bart is controlling his life. Adam tells Sweetie now it is up to her to continue their parents' work, and he signs over his share of the factory and shop to her. Sweetie is heartbroken and disappointed by her brother's decision to quit and leave her to deal with the evil Bart Volgar. Adam tells Sweetie that he trusts her and she is stronger than she knows, and she has been blessed with their father's secret. It's in her blood, stronger than it ever was in Adam. Adam leaves Sweetie to run the shop and factory and sets out into the world seeking the answers to the disappearance of their parents and Max. Sweetie becomes the sole owner of King's Sweet Shop and the factory and paid Max portions of their profits to that horrible Bart Volgar. Although a master candy maker and devoted to the crafts, would become increasingly distraught by the loss of her family and the progressive gentrification of New York City, which was destroying the mom and pop shops and the pawn shops in favor for high-rise buildings and commercial enterprises. Meanwhile, New York's finest obsessed narcissistic mayor declares war on sugar, desperately trying to enact legislation to outlaw sweets. The arrogant mayor believes that he knows what's best for the citizens of New York City as he launches an aggressive campaign to eradicate what he deems hazardous to the public, completely oblivious and uncaring to small business owners of the ice cream shops, the bakeries, the restaurants, the candy stores, etc. He forces his personal beliefs on the city rather than letting citizens make their own decision about what they choose to eat and enjoy. Furious by the mayor's attempts to outlaw candy, ice cream, cake, etc., Sweetie closes down the family company and the sweet shop, freeing herself from Bart Volgar as he is her sworn enemy. She knows he is responsible for her parents and Max's disappearance. Sweetie created her new brand, Sweety Candy Vigilante. Bart Volgar is now involved in organized crime and regards Sweety Candy's brand as something he was cheated out of. He conspires with the mayor that her brand of sweetness is bad for the citizens of the city and vows to destroy her. Sweetie now opens up this factory. She declares her own war on anyone who tries to tread down her brightness. She lives to campaign for the cause of those who enjoy a little sugar in their lives. But what he doesn't realize is that Sweetie has become a master candy maker and a chemist, and she possesses the skills far beyond her father. She has developed creations that are detectable and powerful addictives. We work in this factory, and Sweetie spends her days and nights crafting new candy formulas that have special, powerful, delicious, and addictive confrontations. Searching through her father's library, she learns that he is a master candy wizard. She discovers her father's journals and recipes for making candy that has special powers that only feel their magic on good of the heart. The formulas warn that if a bad person consumes or comes in contact with the magical recipe, it will end badly. Sweetie decides to experiment on the variation secret formulas on herself, feeling her powers grow stronger every day. She has evolved into this being, and now she is Sweetie Candy Vigilante. Now Pixie says, so why doesn't she just take care of this Bart dude? She got lit and took the entire bar out. Why doesn't she just off him off now? Candy Wolf says because he's the only link to find out what happened to her parents and Max. He is living on borrowed time, Pixie. And she says, well, how do I fit into this story? Well, Sweetie chose you and the site that the bar that you worked in is going to be the new Sweetie Candy Vigilante shop. The bar was designed to be the new shop as foretold to Sweetie by the ice cream bunny. Pixie looks up at him with confusion in her face and she says, you said being. Is she right now? Right then and there, Sweetie walks up and says, Pixie Stick, are you a good egg or a bad egg? Candy Wolf says, you need to be the being that you really are before all the bad stuff happens and dims your shine. Pixie smiles and says, ever since I could remember, every thought begins, well, does it come in black? And now all I see is light. I am with you both now and forever. I have a couple requests. Oh, yeah? What is that? Well, can you change the air to make it smell like Play Doh? Candy Wolf and Sweetie both look at Pixie and say, yeah, of course, we can totally do that. And she says, at some point, I would like to hear the story of Candy Wolf. And as he bites a piece of his candy from his necklace, he says, well, that's a whole nother can of gummy worms. All in good time, Pixie. And now Sweetie yells, well, goody gumdrop, grab those drinks, CW. We got some sweet new stuff to show you guys. Now let's hit the weapons room. Weapons! End of chapter 3.